Okay, go for it.
All right, so this week we're going to do enter the paradox. Next week we'll do use of metaphor. The third one is devil's advocate, which we already covered when we were doing commitment strategies. So then the next one will be extending after that. And then we'll just get as far as we get. So entering the paradox. It says in the book that one of the things that we really want to do with DBT is to get their attention, and entering the paradox is a really good way to get their attention. It goes back on that like throwing them off balance thing. So when we enter the paradox, what we're doing is we're highlighting the paradoxical contradictions. And in DBT, we're doing that with three things. Highlighting the paradoxical contradictions of their own behavior, the therapeutic process, and reality in general. And this is where like I struggle is, and I'm just going to read this one little thing word for word. So it says, the therapist highlights for the patient the paradoxical contradictions of the patient's own behavior, of the therapeutic process, and of reality in general. The patient's attempts at rational explanation of a paradox meet silence, another question from the therapist, or a story or slightly different paradox that may throw some, but not too much light on the problem to be solved or on the enigma to be solved. And this ties exactly into what EB started our mindfulness with the Cohen, I don't know how to pronounce that either, but it's that same thing where we're not trying to solve it for them or explain it for them. And I think it was really good for me to read this because that's what's been tripping me up, because I tend to operate very much in like logic, and I have to fight the desire to just like explain it and get into this whole like didactic discussion, and just letting the client kind of work through it themselves and struggle with it themselves to figure it out. So that's the piece that I'm struggling with, is what does that actually look like in session? How do I like just present those paradoxes and then let it just sit there, or coming up with another question that kind of guides them toward it. But before we get to that, the other things that I wanted to highlight in here is that with borderline patients, we have this all the time, these paradoxes, right? And one of them that comes up a lot is deciding who is right and who is wrong whenever a disagreement or confrontation arises. And in the therapeutic relationship, it's sometimes the first one where you have these conflicts where the therapist asserts, I'm okay and you're okay. And that we're validating their point of view, but simultaneously not giving in. And it's interesting because as I had this in my forefront, as we were discussing cases today, I could see where some of this can tie in. So like, Candace, for your client with the email, this could be a great way to present this, that, you know, because it might meet with some resistance. And in her mind, it's, but I need to send this email to you and I need you to respond. And acknowledging that, yeah, she has that need and that she's right and that she needs that. And at the same time, you're right in that you can't have that, like it just won't work for you. And so there's other examples in the book of some of that. And I really like, so at the top of page 207, I think that applies to Candace's client too, where it's like the therapist says, if I didn't care for you, I would try to save you. So like in that email, right? If I didn't care for you, I would come in and rescue you and give you the answers and give you what you need in that moment. And then the patient says, how can you say you care for me if you won't save me when I'm so desperate? Well, the synthesis there is you are already saved, kind of going back to what Emily was suggesting, having her use her skills, that she already has it within herself to do what she needs to do. At least that's the sense I'm making of it. Does that sound? Okay. So, and then again, the essence of the strategy of entering the paradox is the therapist's refusal to step in with logic or intellectual explanation. And I know that's where I struggle because I want to like pull them out. So I try to like give an explanation for it. And that actually isn't what we do. We're supposed to just let things happen of their own accord. So by entering the paradox, the therapist continuously stresses to the patient that things can be both true and not true at the same time. And I'm wondering about, Emily, with your last client that we talked about, some of that pull with like, who do I believe? What's true in the situation with mom and dad? And, you know, I mean, obviously there's a truth there somewhere of what actually happened. And
Right.
yet at the same time, that's mom's truth because that's what her experience tells her, right? So there's that whole messy, like, I don't know, we can just sit with that maybe. So I don't know, that's where it gets really confusing for me.
Okay, so help me get there because I didn't follow. Because I'm trying to think about this in terms of this mom and this person. So we're saying that we don't need to dive into whose truth it is with mom and dad.
I don't know. That's where I'm struggling too, because, okay, so here's what it says. By entering the paradox, the therapist continuously stresses to the patient that things can both be true and not true, that an answer can be both yes and no. Both and. Although, you know, I think that's more in the area of like.
I can see that in like saying that mom feels beat up on and abandoned by dad, and
yeah,
you know, I mean, that's true. Whether that was actually the case for the kid though is where I kind of like get in the like, yeah, and he tried very hard to be a part of your life and wanted to defend his wife from being harmed. I don't know.
Yeah, I think that's where it just gets really messy, trying to help him come to like seeing both sides of it, right?
Yeah, I mean, because I don't doubt that mom did feel very abandoned, because I think she's probably just based on the information. She's got some pretty intense abandonment issues. And so when he had an affair, like she may have even stabilized for a little bit with kids and stuff or whatever. And then he pulled the rug out from under her and she's never been able to kind of pull it back. So, I mean, I get where she's coming from and why that would have happened. And, you know, her response to everything is like still destroying this poor kid.
Yeah. Yeah. So that's a really good, I think that's a really good balance there of that. And yeah. So, okay. So, then in addition, so if you go over to page 208, the central paradox of DBT and all therapies is that behavior is good, or is that all behavior is good, yet the patient is in therapy to change bad behavior. And here, and this was like so clear to me last week when I had my session with Riley, because it talks in here about how we validate, right, the responses. So we do like a whole lot of validation early on. So like with self-harm, a lot of validation. And yeah, it's completely understandable why you do this because it's your way to alleviate all the pain and, you know, all of that. But then it says that as long as the patient or the therapist is mirrored in invalidation or validation, we cannot see that the dichotomy itself is an artificial one. So behavior is neither valid nor invalid, neither good or bad. And then once you achieve that balance, the therapist and patient move to a position of neither validation or invalidation, and responses simply are. So then it arises as a consequence of cause and conditions that are both past and immediate, that are both internal and external to the person. So that was like a whole lot. But basically then the responses have consequences, which may either be desired or not. So this came up last week when I had my session with Riley, because she self-harmed again. And she was able to just simply say, when we were doing it, she's like, well, everybody else gets mad and upset when I self-harm because they say it's bad, but I like it and it feels good. And I don't think it's bad. So we were able to get to this place where she was able to talk about that for her, she doesn't feel it's bad. It's only bad because other people get upset. And to me, that really highlighted this whole thing. And we were able to have, because I had just read this, thank goodness, we were able to just kind of talk about that and just kind of be like, yeah, you know, it makes sense that for you, it's good. And you see it as good because it alleviates this pain. And then also talk about how it does concern other people and worry other people that causes this whole problem for her mom. And it was just really cool because it felt like for the first time we were able to, at least temporarily, just kind of sit with that and just be kind of like, yeah, that's kind of where it is. And not feel like I had to use that like before. It had to be kind of that, like where she didn't want to disappoint me. So part of the like control of her not self-harming was because she didn't want to come and admit that she had self-harmed. But it's like we could let that go a little bit. And so we were able to do, I had her do like a pro-con list and be able to kind of look at that and really tried to push her to look at some of her own reasons for that too. And then we just sat with that and really tried to like honor for her that there are definitely pros and not to discount those. So I don't know, we'll see where that goes today. And then the like whole paradox there is the patient is told that she's perfect just as she is, neither good or bad, and completely understandable. Yet she must change her behavior patterns. And I think that's where I'm kind of at with her and my other two that are currently in the hospital / just out of the hospital. Like that just really resonated with me, especially the one that's in the hospital right now, because we were getting ready for a family session when she went into the hospital, and she just like broke down sobbing in our last session when we were preparing for the family session, because she was like, my parents are just going to talk about all the bad stuff I do, and then I just feel like this bad person and I feel horrible. And she was able to like really actually talk about that. And it's just achieving that balance of, you know, you're perfect as you are, you're neither good or bad, and yet we still have to change the behavior because it's causing all these other problems for you. So anyway, that's what I have. And at the same time, I still feel like I struggle with how to like convey that when those dialectics arise and how to do that. So anyway, we may want to pick it up a little bit more next week again. Because the skill for next week is use of metaphor, which I think also links closely to this paradox thing. So thoughts, comments, struggles, ideas?
I liked it. I like talking about this because then I could, you know, spend some more time on it in my head.
Yeah, I would really like to be able to role play this a little bit with situations, like just how that comes up. Like I'm struggling with how, like the application of it, I think. And I think it's also a little bit hard because it's not like just a set skill, you know, me, it's different than like devil's advocate, where you have this set like skill, because it seems like it has to just kind of naturally come up in situations.
Would you want to maybe put off use of metaphor to revisit, like see like maybe if those situations present for us throughout the week, and then bring those situations into our next consult and like try to role play them out? Thoughts, just to kind of take it the next onion layer, I guess.
I like that idea.
Months.
That what?
This one's kind of hard, so we could do it over
Mhm.
2 sessions.
Yeah.
Okay.
Something comes up this week that you can use as an example.
Yeah.
I mean, we can all say that we're looking for those this week and just kind of prime ourselves to look for those. And then that gives us opportunity to have heard it, look for it, practice it, and bring it back for like some role play and problem solving.
Yeah, I think that would be good, because I think for me, this is like such an essential part of DBT. Like, not that it isn't all important, of course, but to me, it feels like this lays like the, because it's the dialectical strategies, which is
Yeah.
what DBT is, and it's finding that balance. And I think for me, until I can really get these dialectical approaches down, I'm going to be stuck where I'm at and not be able to move forward with becoming better. So, yeah. Okay. Yay.
Okay.
All right. So we'll keep on with dialectical strategies. Yeah. Okay. Yay. All right.